Hello, my name is Prince Solame Herise. Today I'll be hosting this Conflict Cafe interactive section hosted by Santa Fe College. Today we're going to be discussing on a topic that cuts within the American system. It's a burning topic that I believe our guest today going to benefit from, and it's hosted by Justice Club. Justice Club is a club in Santa Fe College that coordinates students on issues that borders on justice, and it also serves as a platform for them who want to go into law school. We'll be having different guests today who will be digging on this issue on prison reforms. These individuals are involved in their different capacity with the organizations on how to reform the prison in our society. I'll be having them introduce themselves. I'll be going from my far left. We have Mr. Ed Gavin first.
All right, thank you, Prince. My name is Ed Garvin, and I have been a practicing lawyer and CPA, but that's not why I'm here. I've also been involved for about 30 years with an organization called Kairos Prison Ministry International. Kairos is a non-denominational Christian ministry that includes a 3-day weekend inside the prison facility for the inmates. We do that 1 or 2 times a year, and then every month we go back for a period of worship and teaching services inside the institution. Now, interestingly, Kairos was actually founded in the state of Florida. Back in 1976, the first weekend was held at Union Correctional, which is just up the road from here in Gainesville. But since then, Kairos has grown to over 30,000 volunteers, and they serve in 36 states in the United States, plus an additional 9 countries internationally. In total, Kairos serves over 400 prisons worldwide, and I'm presently serving as part of a 40-member Kairos team at the main unit of Lake Butler Reception and Medical Correction Facility about 20 miles from here. Essentially, the Kairos ministry seeks to encourage individual transformation. And by transformation, we mean an internal change in the person's heart and mind, not merely reformation of or changing their external behavior. Christian scripture describes this transformation as becoming a new creation through a new spiritual birth and followed by spiritual growth. This transformation is founded upon truth, the truth of Scripture, not upon feelings or external pressure. Thus, it really transcends circumstances and external social pressures as well as individual issues. So that's who I am and why I'm here.
Thank you. Next.
So my name is Luis Felipe. I am from Brazil. I am attorney in Brazil, used to work with criminal law in Brazil. I've been assistant at public defense in Brazil for 2 years. I believe I'm here because I deal with the defendants every time in this couple of years which I work with public defense. I deal with a lot of situations before and after the prisons with the same people, dealing with the family, dealing with the resocialization, and with all the criminal process involved all over these kind of issues. So I'm here in Gainesville doing my master in law in UF. I do some research and war on drugs and how the person who go to prison, especially in Brazil and Latin America, because it's where I used to study and work, deal with this war on drugs situations and the very crowded prisons. So I expect to have a lot here today.
Thank you. Mr. Jeff?
Yes, my name is Jeffrey Cobb. I'm Director of Shelter from the Storm Ministry of Post-Release for men and women released from jail and prison. Give them housing once they get out. I travel to prisons all over the world for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And for this grade here, because I'm a reformed prison, 25 years of being out, and 20 years November 1st, operating the Shelter from the Storm ministry. So I'm excited to be here to share what's going on and how you can be involved, even much if you want to write somebody in prison, help start reforming them by writing them letters in prison. So I'm very excited about this.
Thank you very much. Mr. Will?
My name is Willie Smith. I have 45 years invested in the prison system. I went to prison as a young man. I did 27 years of incarceration. That validates me being here. I've been doing 17 years of prison ministry. I've been going to conventions, speaking at conventions for the Parole Board, speaking to kids in about 90 different agencies involved in the convention, about 5,000 to 6,000 kids. Today, I am the director of House of Hope, transition house for men and women getting out of prison. Hopefully that in the course of sharing that you guys could draw some inspiration and want to make a difference that not being made. Thank you.
Well, I'm Adrian Price, and I'm currently a student at Santa Fe College, and I'm a member of the Justice Club myself, and also I will be what they call the ward of the state, because I'm currently serving probation, and I did 11 and a half years of prison. So I committed my crime in 2006, and it's 2021, and I'm still, so I'm actively into this reform, I guess. I'm the reason why they are here, if that makes sense. So I'm a product of their efforts, and I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bert Meeks. I'm a 66-year-old ex-felon, having served 45 consecutive years in prison, having been recently released. And I'm presently a resident at Mr. Jeffrey Cobb's Shelter from the Storm Release Center. And I'm just honored to be here to share and learn. Thank you.
Well, we're definitely going to have a very swell section today from the introductions we've had. So we're going to be talking about prison reforms, and we're going to be looking at prison reforms from three aspects. The pre-prison, the prison itself, and the post-prison. So these three aspects of prison reforms is actually what encapsulates the essence of the prison system. Just to give a little insight on these three aspects, we certainly know that things happen before people go to prison. How do we, curb those measures? How do we, reduce? How do we prevent people from going to prison? That's the first ambit. Then the second ambit is when it has already happened and there's somebody in the prison system. How do we, work on rehabilitation within the prison systems? What are some of the legislation? What are some of the initiatives that has been established by the government? And the last part is when somebody finally leaves prison, and we're going to be talking about reformations. We're going to be talking about rehabilitations. So this is going to form the three prongs in which we are going to be looking at this issue on prison reforms. I'm going to be asking our panelists questions based on the introduction they just gave to you, and so we will cut straight to the chase on our questions. First, I'm going to be asking Mr. Cobbs the first question. You talked about something that really caught my eye in terms of how do you reach out to people in prison? What are some of those things they go through? Because being in the prison system is a different ball game. And there's a psychology that goes with it in terms of how do we relate, how do we communicate with the families outside, how do they feel in terms of them being locked up for a long time or whichever time they spend in the prison. So what are some of those psychology, and how can we be able to work on that to mitigate some of the things they go through and be a part of what they're going through in the prisons?
I think what's important, when I was speaking about letters,
Yeah.
you have some guys that have been in prison 50 years and haven't got a letter. Just a letter coming to them make a difference. It make a difference somebody care. Because you look at it, most of the guys go to prison, their family throw them away. And here go a stranger write me a letter, somebody encouraging me, you know, trying to help reform me. That's what we do when we write letters. We trying to reform a person. And not only that, just special thing. On their birthday, send them a card on their birthday. You know, that let them know you thinking about them. You ain't just throwing them to the curb. And some guys, you know, if you know how I know, the food that they feed you in there is garbage. So if you just send somebody $10, $10 to help them out, it means so much, and they can make a difference in a person's life.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask you this question, Mr. Adrian Price. I've had a lot of discussion with you. I believe you went to the prison when you were young. And this question goes to you. So what can be done to rehabilitate the juvenile offenders in terms of the kind of punishment being melted on them? What are some of those things that can be done, especially when it comes to juvenile offenders?
Well, it's a big topic. It's a huge topic. But to try to condense it, I would say that, of course, it's the how can I put it? It's what's been instituted for punishment, you know. And I think a great way to kind of deter them ending up going to prison is instituting like programs into the school systems, because that's where most kids spend most of the time when they're young. You know, most of the time they're not even at home with their parents anymore. You know, they're at school. So these are institutions where we can place in programs. And like I said, it's a big subject. It's a lot I want to say. Because we have to understand the importance of outside resources. Because in home, they may not be getting what they need to be successful, you know. And I think that education is a great avenue or a great deterrence or a great thing to set a child's hope in to get them to not go to prison. And what I mean by that is it's simple, you know, especially those who are in, how can I put it, impoverished neighborhoods. A lot of crime is in those areas, so they partake in a lot of antisocial behaviors just because of their surroundings. So when they bring these antisocial behaviors to school, they're punished. So that results in just them maybe getting suspended, and there goes the education. They're not receiving the education. So I think that the programs that need to be put in place is like, especially when kids are doing bad in school as far as grades, because they're not getting that in-home support. That outside resource can kind of, like I say, place programs to the point where when they get in trouble or when they're getting bad grades, that the focus is education, meaning that their punishment is education. Their punishment is tutoring. Like, I mean, it's a big subject, and I don't think I can say one thing, but I think education is a great solution to the prison population. And I'll say this and I'll be done, because I'm just guessing. I wish I had statistics to tell you, but I'm pretty sure they can look up statistics that most of those who are in prison are probably didn't graduate high school. You know, because when I was in there, they didn't have, a lot of guys didn't have a high school diploma. So I think education is a great way to, you know, solve that problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adrian. Mr. Head Gavin, I'm going to ask you this question, considering your involvement with Kairos. The religious organizations play a very major role when it comes to prison reforms. We could take it or leave it. They do so much. I've seen a lot of persons, individuals that became transformed by them being involved with religious programs. So how do you believe, your involvement with Kairos can be able to, create that synergy with government policies and to make, prison reforms, work in our system,
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a difficult question because there's tension between government and so-called religion.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their opinions, and I certainly have mine, but it's not an easy thing. Just like Adrian was saying, none of these are easy things, and so we gotta first peel back off of the easy solutions. There are no easy solutions. They take work and they have to be applied. I think, but my experience in prison is, that one thing that you need in prison if you were going to spend money on, to me, is you need a safer and healthier environment. If I was in charge of the purse strings, that's where my focus would be, is safety and health. That is healthy in the sense of it's possible to get better in here rather than it's very hard. The trouble, the reality of prison, and the guys that have been incarcerated can speak to this more than I, but I've been in there a lot. I've spent years probably by this point in prison, but I always got to leave at the end of the session.
Yeah.
But it's a very dangerous place, and a lot of the people are doing things in the prison that are worse than what got them in there in the first place. And they're doing that to survive because it can be such a difficult place, and it's not always that way for everybody, but it is that way too often. So where the volunteer organizations have is to open up, and the prisons in Florida are doing a really good job, especially prior to the pandemic, of trying to increase volunteerism in the prisons. And most of the people that volunteer, it's not restricted to religious groups, but as it turns out, as you watch the volunteers, most of them are coming from faith-based. And that's because the people believe that what they're doing is from a higher source, and they're committed. And over time, the other people that are there for some other reason will oftentimes weed themselves out. But we focus in Kairos on a program that has multi-facets, but two of those facets are forgiveness and freedom. The forgiveness is the key, and it begins with learning to forgive others. Now you might think, well, gee, somebody in prison mostly just needs to be forgiven themselves, don't they? Well, no. Most people in prison, like most people outside, can identify people that have hurt them along the way, and that's why somebody's in prison is, well, they had a bad childhood, they got involved with the wrong people, they got involved with, they were abused, they suffered violence, whatever, and it's all true. It doesn't excuse what they did, but it's true. And, it's funny that once a person learns to start forgiving other people, they can begin to accept forgiveness from God for themselves. And so that's a huge deal. And I think that's not it's a religious thing in terms of state versus religion. But I always say what we do is not religion. Religion is a man trying to justify himself with God. Christianity is accepting God's free gift of justification or forgiveness. Learning to do that is huge. And the second thing is freedom. Freedom, the focus of the typical person in prison towards freedom is when I get out. Kairos focuses on becoming free now, today, right now where you are. Almost half of the New Testament was written by the Apostle Paul, and a great number of those letters were written while he was, guess where? In prison. He was free in prison. I know a lot of people today, I saw some people last night when I was there, who are incarcerated, many for probably the rest of their life. They're freer than a lot of the people I know on the outside. There's all kinds of ways to be incarcerated, and being incarcerated outside is in many times much worse than being incarcerated inside.
Thank you very much for that response. I will be asking you this question, Mr. Will Smith, and being involved with the House of Hope, that is a prison transition home, and rehabilitation plays a very major role with what the House of Hope stands for. So how has the program been able to reach out to persons that come into the house that you have at the House of Hope and been able to transform them within the light of rehabilitation? Because there's certainly the synergy between this prison transition home and the prison system. Take it or leave it, they play so much role in terms of rehabilitating, individuals that come out of prison, and it has also helped a lot in terms of recidivism that we see a lot in the prison system. So, how has your program been able to, help out in terms of rehabilitation and putting those persons that come out of prison in the right track?
What happens is places like Shelter from the Storm, House of Hope, these are transition houses that help guys get out of prison. And once a guy's incarcerated, I think it take a lot of his choices from him. He's restricted from liberty. So when he restricted from liberty, he make about 25 choices a day being locked up. When he get out, it's about 225 choices a day. He's overwhelmed by all the different choices you have to make. With that being said, a man come from a controlled environment to a liberal environment, it can be traumatizing and overwhelming, especially a guy like myself that been locked up for almost 30 years. So when he get out, he go to another controlled environment. He's in a transition house, a reentry center, where we create the atmosphere, a therapeutic environment where it can. I believe that when you bless a man and empower him while he's there, you bless and empower his family, and that bless and empower the community. So we have to reach these guys while they're there so that they can receive the blessing, they can receive the empowerment so the family and the community can be blessed. So that's what the transition house stands for, is making that transition and reintegrating back into society. It's a difficult task, especially when you're an ex-felon. All the doors are closed. It's like you got leprosy. You can't rent a place. You can't, it's difficult to get a job. All these doors are closed. And when you come to transition house, the doors are open for a guy that's incarcerated. And we are there, with a kindred spirit, with open arms and hope prayerfully with the community support. Because these same people are going to be back in the community. Law-abiding taxpaying citizen. They can be redeemed like I've been redeemed. Some of these men sit here, so we can't give up on these guys because they made a mistake. Everybody don't have the criminal mischief and the compulsion to do what's wrong. And some of the people that's been redeemed, some of them, like the brother said, while he's in prison, he's been liberated like me. I wasn't waiting to be set free. I was waiting to be released. My freedom came while I was in prison. All the strongholds, all the vices, all the generational curses, all that stuff I had to deal with, all my personal issues, that was dealt with, while I was in prison. But then when I got out of prison, I was being released. So that's what the transition house is for. It's a great opportunity for the community to be involved and continue to impact and bless the men and women so that the community, the families in the community can be blessed.
Thank you very much for that response. I'm going to ask Mr. Wilbur this question because we're going to take it from Mr. Will's response. You happen to be a resident at Shelter from the Storm, and you've been there for a while, and you still keeping on going on, doing the right thing. So I'm going to ask you this practical question. What are some of the things that you've used as a model to be in the right track without being distracted, even if you've been in the prison for quite a while, but now you're out, you want to be focused and you want to do what is right. So what are some of those things that has helped you to create that model towards being on the right track? Yeah.
Contrary to society's perspective, when an individual is locked up and sent away to prison for criminal acts, the first perspective is, oh, your life has been ruined. It's over. You're a convicted felon now. You're out of it. Nothing. That wasn't the case for me. Prison didn't ruin my life. It saved my life. Listen, I came from a prototypical dysfunctional family. My parents were criminal. My 5 brothers and 4 sisters were criminals. We grew up in poverty in this ghetto. It was like a little concentric circle. We were in the middle, and we knew nothing about a larger outside world that offered success.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the environment that I came from. So don't let nobody tell you that environment doesn't affect a person. Okay, I went to prison at 17 years old for murder, robbery, attempted murder, and a couple other little things. I got a life and 30-year sentence. But the mindset I had at that point, going to prison was a badge of honor for me, like many of my peers. You know, we grew up like that, and like, hey, prison, I mean, yeah, you know, you get to lift weights and do this, and you come out, you're a bad guy. You understand what I'm saying? And this is what going to prison was like for me. This was my attitude. When I got there, it was entirely different. I mean, the whole prison system today is entirely different from what it was when I went in back in 1972. You speak about reforms. It's like morality. You can't legislate morality. You can't legislate reform. You can throw all the money you want at it. It has to start on the individual, psychological, personal level with someone. You spoke of the juveniles. You have to start from that perspective. A lot of them, they're almost incorrigible. I mean, you come with your programs, they ain't hearing that. They done been through all this ugly experience with family and society, and in prison, it takes all kind to make a world. In prison, you find all kind. Everybody's not on the same page. If you come with your reform, whether it's religious or whatever, everybody's not going to conform to that. So it's really not going to work on a whole for everybody. Maybe certain individuals who will buy into that and say, hey, I really want this. I want to do this. I want to change. I want to be better. It'll work for them. A small percentage, okay? But for the larger part of it, it just doesn't work. That's been my experience, okay? And the government can throw all the money you want at it. We start these new programs. They just don't work. I mean, there's many reasons why they don't work. That's another long story. But I'm not saying we should give up. But for one thing, it's like prison has just become a warehouse. I mean, you just warehouse these individuals, and so you come up with these programs like he mentioned. Education, I mean, your basic stuff, ABC, arithmetic, okay, you get your GED, and that's pretty much the extent of it. They may have a little program over here saying, well, carpentry, masonry, a little basic stuff, but it doesn't go far enough, okay? So my opinion on the subject of reform, I mean, which is real crucial, if you're really interested in prison reform, I would think the best way to do this is to go in prison and really bring marketable skills to give to these guys. Instead of these big warehouse dormitories with just beds in them, put car motors in them, refrigerators, stoves, something where you can get people in there and say, listen, this is a marketable skill. So when you get out of here, you will be a real certified auto mechanic, or this and this. These are real skills that they don't give you in prison. Once upon a time back in the day, there were a few things, you know, little plumbing. Everything is gone now pretty much. It's just academic stuff, and nobody really cares. It's like we bring these things in here, and like I say, you got all kind in prison. Everybody's not going to take the advantage of this. Everybody don't want this. So it comes to the place where, listen, it's not working. We're sending this money, making these programs. No one wants to participate. Why? I mean, what's really going on? Why? Well, we're trying to legislate reform. We're giving you this and giving you that, but it's not working. So you got to find the bottom line to why reform isn't working. I mean, anyway, my getting out, when I got out after 45 years, most of my relatives were dead. So there's a couple in prison in other states. I had no one, okay? Shelter from the storm was available for me. I had no idea what I was going to do when I got out, where I was going to go, no family. But the thing that worked to my advantage was while in prison, I bettered myself. I educated myself. I was an avid reader. That's what I really wanted. I wanted to make something of my mind. I mean, that's where it begins, up here on the psychological, personal level. That's where reform begins. If it don't begin here, it's not going to work. So that's what reformed me. Don't want to go into the religion. I mean, Jesus is my Savior. Okay, I mean, really, that's where I really found my security. Prior to that, I thought my security was in guns or in money or material things and the women in the streets. That was the security. Come to find out, that wasn't security at all. Okay, the only real security is spiritual security. I don't want to get too deep in digressing, but my story, I can only really speak from my personal perspective, okay, and how it related to me and others that went through the same thing. Getting out of prison, it was a challenge. I mean, suddenly I was hit with all these decisions, like, I gotta get a car, I gotta get a job, and this, and this, and this, and in prison it's like, everything is provided for you. Your meal, breakfast time, you don't have to work for it, it's free. Your housing, you got a cot to sleep in, free showers, we give you something to dress. You just stay in between the lines and don't cause no trouble, okay, and you'll be okay. Out here it was entirely different. But thank God, I mean, I had educated my mind, I had some marketable skills that helped me, assisted me in a big way. And I'm on the road to, another thing, prison is, you go in prison for shoplifting, and you find prison is a university of criminality. Okay, you get to prison and you learn all the other criminal stuff, and like, whoa, and you need somebody to tell you, hold up, you're going down the wrong way, you don't want to learn that, you want to learn this. But this is more interesting to the criminal mindset. And hordes will go down this broad way of criminality, thinking, well, when they get out, get rich or die trying. Hold up, no, you don't want to die like that. I mean, you don't understand death, really. Also, anyway, thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Right.
Really,
If we have time,
Yeah.
he said a lot.
Yeah, I know.
And I just want to add this one thing.
Okay.
You know, in sociology, they teach you that neither the individual or the community is the sole of, how can I put it, the sole reason how a person ends up, or, you know, their success or their demise, or whatever the case may be, their failures. Neither the individual or the society, right, are totally or solely responsible. Both work hand in hand. And it's proof in that, and social institutions kind of form us as people. So it's important to attack the social institutions. Just like prison, you went to prison, it was an institution. And they institutionalized you according to that system. And it was successful because you admitted that it was hard when you got out to adjust. Because your mind had been conditioned, your attitude and behaviors had been conditioned. And one of the conditions or the negative conditions of institutionalism is of lack of initiative, because you didn't have to do nothing for so long, but now you have to make all of these decisions. So I think that, and I'll be short, and I think that the community or the United States of America, even though it's a small percentage of people that have these antisocial behaviors, that's homeless or that's committing crimes, it's just the pinky toe, right? But if your pinky toe was hurting, you would pay attention to it.
Certainly.
So I think that the United States need to recognize this as, how can I put it? It's an emergency. It's a state of emergency because we are all suffering from this. And if the whole community would adjust the institutions or the social institutions, education, family, they have to attack all of those positions, and we have to do it collectively. Then we will be more successful, and these places like your home or the environment that you grew up in would almost, how can I put it, in a dream world not exist. But we need to attack and put effort toward those things. And I think that's my opinion on that.
Thank you very much. We're going to come to this, comments that both of you make, looking at the social framework vis-a-vis the prison system. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Mr. Luis Felipe some questions. Looking at the global, looking at the prison system from a very global perspective, we see a lot of nations in other parts of the world, like what we will talk about, who have better, systems compared to the American prison system. One of the essence, based on my research, about the American prison system is majorly based on punishing and deterrence, which becomes a very big factor. Like in countries like Sweden and other countries who have a very well-reformed prison rehabilitation system, even within the prison, they teach you, like you talked about, some very, skills that when you come out of prison, you'll be able to utilize those skills. I want you to touch on a comparative analysis in terms of other parts of the world and the U.S. Prison system. What do you think the U.S. prison system needs to do on the angle of policy, on the angle of interventions, and the angle of legislation, so to speak?
So I can take as some example, like the major issues that everyone mentioned here is pretty much similar than the major issues what happens in Brazil, and I have some contacts with, like the lack of orientation, lack of education, lack of family care of everything, the lack of a community to take care of the individual. And Brazil have the second most population prison in the world. United States is in the first place. Unfortunately, we are trying to reach USA in that. Yeah. And one of global statistics that I was looking before coming here, it's like the world at all have 10.3 million persons incarcerated. And the major issue with these people is like when they get out of the prison, they don't have anything to do. But when we look for juvenile, the re-education, the re-retention with these people works better than the persons who have more than 18 years old. So I think that the system of the prisons around the world, especially in the occidental part of the world, who have some near cultures, have to focus on their rehabilitation. Because talking about numbers, that we can take a better picture of all, 17% of the juveniles who have more education and get out of the prison around the world come back to be criminals again. So the other, I'm bad at maths, but the other ones, beside of the 17%, don't come back to commit crimes. So this is a sign that the rehabilitation works.
Right.
But when we are discussing about adults committing crimes, as everyone mentioned here, you have to do something more precisely, more individually, because the mindset of this person is already being some kind of corrupted, and it's harder to re-socialize. And this is the point I think that the government, the law enforcement, should pay more attention.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would like to say that when what comes to mind when I think about prison reform is that I went to prison in 1977. I got out in 2004. And when I went in, if you didn't have a GED or high school diploma, you had to go to school. And it was called Department of Correction or Department of Rehabilitation. Okay, so it was some reasonable expectation that you could be corrected or rehabilitated. Okay, and now it's more leaning toward punitive. The mindset is punitive, punishment. But we got to be mindful of that. When we talk about reform, it does not just affect the individual, it affects the families, it affects the victims, it affects many different aspects when you talk about reform. So and I believe that accomplishments be a character. So we sitting here today on this panel because we men have accomplished enough to have enough character to say, I dare to be different and I want to change. And I will take advantage of accumulate the many academic and vocational opportunities that awaits that's there for me. They have been taken out. The academic and vocational trade is not there anymore. So you're warehousing men. So we don't have an opportunity to reform. So for a person to reform, it has to be something that he do on his own. But when I was in, it's the system encouraged that. You know, and they brought academic and vocational trade. They were college courses, and you know, I learned Spanish in there. I took a course in small business management. All these different things was available. Now you can't do that kind of stuff. You know, small engines. I could go on and on with many different trades that I took while I was in. But now the guy getting out now, we talk about marketable skills. He can get out with the hope that he can get out and earn a living, or be inspired by someone on the outside that might can say, okay, my life was different. And because my life was different, I can help you, empower you to be a better person, or point you in a different direction. Because the man just expressed the environment does make a difference. Okay, and if you're that person that you didn't have to worry about what you're gonna wear, what you're gonna eat, where you're gonna sleep. You know, if you're gonna be hungry when you went to school, you didn't have that concern. You got some other people that does have a legitimate concern, and that's part of the reforming is to go back. And we talk about this young man here that was young when he went in. I was 17 when I went in. You know, and I was a guy, you know, sometimes we have the unrealistic goals and expectations of ourselves, wanting to be this man and really not understand that you're still a child. And you don't know that until you get around in the prison where they sent me to gladiator school. A man, you have to be a man. You say, whoa, I didn't think that it encompassed all of this. I didn't think that, another thing you don't understand as a kid is consequences. So sometimes we have to teach that kind of stuff. Sometimes that kind of stuff have to be prevalent in a person's life. To, you know, be in a contaminated environment, a toxic environment, and then he goes to a prison, and then ultimately he could evolve and the redemption process can take place. And the metamorphosis in my life was the four walls of the prison. It wasn't me getting out, it was what I was in. And I got introduced to being a man, of being around men. And being around brothers like this that had pores and that was well composed and dealt with trials and tribulations. I like Martin Luther King said, the ultimate of a man does not withstand the comfort or convenience. But when trials and tribulation come, how do we handle that? When challenge and controversy come, how do we deal with that? And that's when we see the true person. And time is the only two tests of anything. So when a man have done that many years and he can still come out of his right mind, you can say that that God had been with him and gracefully, and he have the grace of God. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Will. Yeah, thank you for the response. Mr. Jeff Cobb, this next question is for you. The drug war has been a very big one over the years, and if you look at the population of people that go into prison, there's always been this, you know, influence in terms of the drugs, you know, that sales and usage and all that. So how do you think society or even ministries like yours can be able to, you know, change, you know, this whole usage of drugs by our young ones, and which, you know, in a very large extent takes them into the prison system?
Oh, that's a tough one. But just like the brother right there said, man, education, man, once you start educating a person, they feel better about themselves. You know, they want to accomplish stuff. When I went to prison, I couldn't read. I couldn't read when I went to prison. But once I started reading and educating myself, I felt better about myself. I didn't want to stay in prison. Once I started reading and educating myself, I got up one morning. Number one, I say, hey man, God say, be fruitful and multiply. I educated myself, I'm at the wrong place. God can't be fruitful and multiply with no man. So I say, number one, I'm in the wrong place.
Yes.
Only me can do something about the situation.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay. I said, then I need to get out of here. And I say, once I get out of here, I'm going to stay out. See, I was done started educating myself. I was at the wrong place. Till you come in to the knowledge you going in the wrong direction,
Yeah.
you doomed. You doomed. So, really, I think they need to have more groups or programs that go on the streets and talk to these guys. Like a group like this, done been in there, done been there. And let them guys see, hey man, you know, just be honest with them, not trying to sugarcoat it to make yourself look good. Be straight up with them, what happened, what gonna take place, you know, when you get there, in prison, you know, and let them wear it out. Hey man, you wanna be in prison the rest of their life, or you wanna be an NBA star, man? Which one you wanna be? Cause once you go to prison, you done mostly. You done. So we have to bring straight reality to them. And like Wilbur was saying, all of them ain't gonna accept it. How you gonna tell me to talk my reform when I was in Miami and I was with a group, organization, we were making $70,000 a night? How you gonna tell me talking about I need to stop? Come on, man, I ain't want to hear that.
Yeah.
You know, so some ain't gonna hear that, but just like Brother Willis say, we don't give up on them. Some of them gonna hear it, and some of them not gonna hear it. But we got to keep on going. And like I said, and once, man, look at him, once I got out of prison and I started doing good, man, and this red-bone female started hollering at me, man, I said, I ain't going back to prison. I said, man, you crazy. I'm definitely ain't going back. And then once I started doing that, I started getting in, I started educating myself, then I started going higher, and then in the Seventh-day Adventist church, I told the bishop, I say, hey man, I say, man, all of these people in prison, man, who y'all got to going into prison, man? Y'all need to go and talk to them or have somewhere where they can go when they get out. The bishop looked at me. He said, you know what, sis, you know it, all that. I'm going to use you, give me a budget so I can use, God can use you to do that. And man, when I'm saying what? In the Seventh-day Adventist church, by God's grace, I'm the prison ministry person in our denomination in the world. You know, so once he told me that, man, I was educated. What? What to do what? No, man, you do this. And man, I felt good about myself during this and that. And then when they flew me to California and picked me up in a limousine, I said, I know I ain't going back to prison now. You know? So it had me, I was educating myself, and I felt good about myself. Man, but a lot of people, they be trying to be friends with these young kids. Ain't no friend. You be real with them. And cause I remember in our church, they had me preach, and I just let it out straight out real. When I got done preaching, man, you should have seen the young people drooling around me. They were like, Hey man, why they don't tell us this? Why the church don't tell us like you tell us? In my denomination, they call me the dude to keep it real. You know? So man, after that, man, you got to just be real with, you got to be real with a person, man. And I let them know I ain't passed every test. You know, I made mistakes, but I ain't give up. So you just have to be real with them and tell them what's happening. And like I tell them, because I go into most of prison every weekend. I'm in some prison. And then just let them know what you see, man. I'm like, hey, man, you get 40 years, you going to be in there. You want to be there? Or you want to be out? You know, I told one guy, I was like, hey, man, you can't go down to Kentucky Fried Chicken and get no chicken, man. So that what you want the rest of your life? I say, man, you want to be like this, never see a beach again in your life? Because I ain't never heard no prison system program take you to the beach. I ain't never heard that one. So you have to put reality for them. You got to make people think, man.
Right.
Think and weigh it out. And we just pray that they come to a different, just make a change. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very
I'd
much.
like to say something. Yeah. I'm a hardliner. Okay, I mean, I believe in taking a hardliner stance. No nonsense. Okay, prison reform is kind of like our economic reform. We got to bite the bullet, and nobody wants to do that. We got to make some drastic sacrifices to come back from the brink of where we are. Yeah. Frankly, I don't think ain't no coming back. It's over, okay? But I'm saying if there is a chance, that's what everybody's going to have to take this hardliner stance. We got to suffer. We got to take the bullet. We got to make sacrifices. We got to go through hell in order to come back. Nobody wants to do that. The key to real prison reform, I would say, okay, is you got to take a hardline, authoritarian stance. Instead of prisons being warehouses, you got to make them lockdown vocational centers, like do or die. Listen, if you want to get out of here, you got to do this. You got to conform to this. You got to educate yourself. You got to show you want to do this. If you're not doing it this way, you're done. No, that's it. This is the only way. We got to make them do this. Okay, you got all kind in there. You got your psychiatric cases, like out here in the streets. You got all these psychiatric people. What can you do for them? Nothing. Just go around and gather them up, put them in a place. They're hopeless. You can't really do anything for them, okay, except house them. All right, they're hopeless. You got those in prison too. They're incorrigibles. You got people in there that need to be in there, who don't need to get out. You got to categorize them. All in the name of prison reform. Now, we can't let them out because of this. It's like this sexual offender thing. Hey, they got really strict restrictions on those people. It's like they're like, hey, they're beyond hope. We can't do nothing. We don't care about Jesus, religious, nothing. We're not opening the door for these people. You're stuck where you are, okay? We don't want to hear anything. Prison reform has to be similar to that. It's not a country club kind of thing, but the attitude when I left prison was like, listen, we don't, the authorities, like, we really don't care. You do your time and you get out. We don't care how you do your time. Just don't cause no trouble, no problems. Watch TV all day, play your games and your checkers. That's fine with us until you get out. Then when you get out, I mean, what you come in with, that's what you're going out with. Because, hey, that's the way it is. So, prison reform, now, if you're going to throw all this money in these programs, this is the way it has to be. Do or die. You get it or you ain't getting out, okay? I mean, really, all right? Yeah, that's the only way it's going to work. Otherwise, it's going to continue going down the road. They're going to come out worse than when they went in, okay? And that's just it. I'm sorry. That's the key to reform. You got to do it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, religion has its place too now. Your spiritual aspects, yeah, that's going to be applicable and effective in a lot of cases. I mean, if it reach everybody with Jesus Christ. Like, yeah, I mean, I understand why I'm here on this planet. I mean, I understand the wrong road I was going down. My parents were criminal. I was following them. Nobody told me different. Now I'm in prison, like I feel like it's not my fault. I didn't know. Oh, no, son, we don't want to hear that. You're in here for 30, 40 years. Now I'm bitter and resentful, like, wow, I mean, I wish somebody would have told me this. Can I have another chance? Oh, no, you're stuck. Appellate court, we write to the court, say like, you're in there. So it's just so much involved. But the bottom line, in my opinion, agree or not, prison reform, especially with the young, hardened juveniles going in there these days, it's like, hey, you got to do it this way, son, or it ain't happening. Okay, we're making you do it. If you choose not to do it, you're over here, you're in here for ever, okay? I mean, if you kill somebody to come in here or whatever. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that last little thing.
Yeah.
My opinion about prison reform is hard, but it's fair. That's the only way with the level of criminals coming up in the world these days. Just throwing everybody in this warehouse, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to speak. Senator Keith Perry, me and him, we're good friends, and we talk a lot. And that's what he's trying to build, he's trying to pass. That in the prison, they trying to put, if you take up a trade or something like that there, then you get your sentence cut where you can get out early. We don't know when they're going to start or whatever. But he just saying that was something they trying to do. And I think somebody was talking about putting all the people in, you putting all these inmates together. Right. And now he was talking to me about the ones got 1 to 3 years. They putting them at a separate camp. And he wanted to be here today, but he had to be in the Tallahassee. He was planning on coming here today. Yeah. But so like Wilbur said, hey, Wilbur hard code. When you come about transition out, we don't even much play with you.
Zero tolerance.
We don't even much play with you because you gonna do it or just get your stuff and going on. Because you got to do it because him and myself, we know what we had to do to make it this far here with the help of the Lord. We know. So, man, look at here, man. If you go into prison and you thinking the same way when you getting ready to get out, the same way, tell them you'll be ready for count time. Because you on your way back. Yeah. You on your way back if your thinking is the same. Man, look here, I want to share. You know how I know I was changed? When I found out, man, what I took my mom through. I called my mom on the phone, and I went to cry. My mom said, boy, what the matter with you? I say, like he said, Mama, forgive me, man, for all I took you through. I say, I'm changed because I started thinking different. And from there, that's when I know I was changed, man. They have to, and they have to want it. We got a guy right now today that a group that we have, me and him did time in prison. He done been out 15 years, still going back to prison. And I told him, you can talk to him till you blue in the face. Till he decide he want to change. He ain't going to change. They got to want to better themselves.
Thank you very much. This has been, like I said, this has been a very intense conversation, and I love it. Mr. Ed Gavin, I'm going to ask you this question. Looking at the prison system based on what we're talking about, the prosecutors play some roles. I don't know how much of a role they play in terms of, based on the court practices, but we've had sometimes whereby prosecutors have actually take it upon themselves to walk within the line of what the system is, whereby it's, let us do more punishment, to crimes. and there are some crimes that could be handled in different ways than somebody not going to prison. So looking at it from that angle, being a lawyer also, do you feel there are roles in which the prosecutors need to, because there's a lot of there's a lot of discretion that's been given to the prosecutors in terms of making decisions on who goes to. Do you think there should be better ways for them to handle some crimes that shouldn't, being, given such treatment in terms of people going to prisons? You may want to throw that.
Well, you're outside of my expertise, to tell you the truth, because my law practice has always been in the commercial business and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean I don't have an opinion about what you're asking. It's funny, you talk about justice, right? And people have been talking about justice since 400 years before Christ and before that. That's what Plato wrote about, what is justice. And it's like a collision course, because in one sense people say, well, it ought to be fair. Everybody that does X ought to get Y. Everybody should be treated the same. It shouldn't matter whether you got money, don't have money, whatever, right? At the same time, we want a lot of discretion. We want to be able to decide, well, this guy ain't going to make it. Let's just forget about him and let's take this guy who may have done a worse crime but has more potential, and let's teach him a trade and let him get out. You see the conflict between when you start. That's the problem with government and reform in general, is the government has a hard time distinguishing between one person and another. They have to set up objective criteria, and if you meet the criteria, that's the way you get treated, when that's really not a lot of times the right answer, right? You know people, probably every one of us in this room knows people that should be, in an ideal system, getting more government assistance than they're getting, right? We know other people who get more than they should be getting, right? How do you fix that? It's objective qualifications. There's nothing you can do, right? You're the government. That's why, to me, these guys that are involved in transition ministry, these are the heroes of the day. Because I'm telling you, that's the toughest field there is transitioning out of prison and back into society. It's tough. It is very tough. Number one, you're dealing with people who didn't have the best coping skills to begin with, right? That's why they ended up in prison. If they had better coping skills, maybe they'd have stayed in school and whatever. So by definition, they've got the worst coping skills. Then you put them in a situation that's the hardest in the world to cope with. You don't have the education, you don't have any family, you don't have any money, you can't get a job, you can't rent an apartment. Put somebody with a lot of education and experience in that situation, they'll probably fail. But you take somebody that doesn't have good coping skills to start with and put them in that situation, you're really talking about tough. But these guys are there and they're helping them. I'm telling you, this is where the people with a heart to contribute to society, this is where they should look to help, is in that transition. And God bless them. God bless them. And everyone that I know of that's doing that effectively has a heart for the Lord. So, maybe it's just a coincidence, but it just seems to be that way. But the prosecutor discretion, it's a two-edged sword, because these guys get power to do that. And then all kind of things creep in. Their politics creeps in. Their own financial interest creeps in. So it's a tough thing, but I believe in it. I think it's good. I've known a lot of people to benefit when the prosecutor showed some discretion and backed off and said, well, this is the right thing to do, and it worked out well. But we've all heard about a prosecutor who let a husband go instead of a restraining order, and the next thing he did is kill his wife. So, it's a two-edged sword. I wouldn't want to be making those calls. Yes, sir.
We talk about sentencing. Here, we talk in the United States, we have a mass incarceration. We have the largest number of incarceration in the world. And reform, we talk about reforming that, how we deal with it, how we change that. We take a man that's on drugs and we send him to prison. That doesn't help the situation. And sometimes the compelling force to do crime is the fact that he's on drugs. So when you arrest him, you arrest his addiction with him. You put him in a situation where he don't get help. And he did 5 or 10 years in incarceration. You release him, you release his addiction. So and then he never got help while he was there. There's no system in place to deal with that. So in the meantime, we just reinforcing the behavior, because you put him out, he do the same thing again, because he, not that he desired to do it, but he's an addict, and he's dealing with addiction issues. He coming from an environment that was conducive to that. When I was growing up, I seen a man shooting heroin. Everybody said that, man, he sure feeling good. I'm saying, that's what I've been taught. That when a guy shooting heroin, a guy doing meth and doing different stuff like that, they was feeling good. That's what you taught. A guy that was drunk and staggering, he was feeling good. So that become a mindset. That become a belief system. Because you don't know any better. But on the same token, a lot of people attract to that, and they get caught up, and they get on them drugs, and they take them for a lifetime of misery. And the guy get in prison. Then how do we talk about reform? We have to change the narratives. The guy have to not be sent to prison. He has to be in a treatment program to deal with his issues. You send him to prison, you're not helping the situation. They compel the force for him to do the crime because he was on drugs, and then you send him to prison, and he get back out. The recidivism going to be great, because he's the same guy. He educated himself, he learned, but he didn't deal with his addiction. He went to prison because he had an addiction. Now he get out, he still have an addiction. It was swept up on the rug, but it festered and grew while it was sitting there. So he never dealt with it. So when he get back out, he responded the same way he did the last time he was confronted with that situation. He's in prison to that addiction. So that's one of the things I see has been a problem, because in people going to prison at an alarming rate because of drug-related offenses. And we're not talking about that. We're not dealing with that. We let a deaf ear to it, and we turn our head to it, and we send them to prison as opposed to sending treatment. We talking about alternatives. These are some of the alternatives. We being in the transition house of hope, shelter from the storm, we alternative to them getting out. We alternative. But what we do prior to them going in, you send them to prison, then they come out, they still have the problem. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna be quick, I promise.
No.
Just this problem with war on drugs are you talking about? Everywhere in the world who try to give an answer in the same way have the same problem. Since 1,000 years before Christ and until now, nowhere in the world have a good result trying to put people related to drug in prison. So, for me, my opinion, is kind of obvious that the answer for the drug problems is deal with health, not like violence or putting people in jail.
Yeah, I totally accept that too. We trying to work with the time we have, and we've had very wonderful conversation. But I'm gonna go around so that you could give our students one last words about prison reforms. What do you believe can be some of the better solutions in terms of that we can use to advance our society regarding the prison system? So I'm going to start from you, Mr. Head Gavin, also.
Okay. Well, I think what we've heard here from virtually everybody that's spoken is that you begin to think about this problem not systemically necessarily, but remembering that every person in there is a person with their own unique background and their issues and everything else. A lot of times when we talk about recovery or we talk about reform, if I lose my keys and then I find my keys, I say I recovered my keys. I had them, I lost them, I got them back. A lot of times the guys in prison, we talk about them recovering, but if you look at their life, they never really had a life. And so what are they supposed to recover exactly? You know, they don't need recovery. They need a new life, a new mindset, a new heart.
Amen.
And so, you know, the idea that we can legislate that or create it by government fiat is simplistic, and that's why these things don't work. If we regard people as individuals and give them an opportunity to grow as individuals and to transform into what God intended them to be, then I think we're much more likely to be on the right track. It doesn't mean that everyone is going to be okay.
Right.
Jesus said the way is narrow that leads to life. The path is wide that leads to destruction. Many will take it. That's what Jesus said. I'm not going to give another opinion about that. It's just the way it is. And so, but I don't think we ever give up, because there is, the word incorrigible has come up a few times, and I'm not sure exactly what that word means to everybody, but nobody is beyond hope. Nobody is beyond grace. And, you know, it took prison to teach me that. Going into prison taught me that. Nobody is beyond grace and beyond coming to salvation. So I say don't give up, and especially I say that to these guys that are on the front line. And thank God for you guys. Thank you, and thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Mr. Lewis, your last word?
So first, thank you very much for inviting me here, and it's my first opportunity to talk about this in US, so I'm very happy to have this opportunity. And the most important thing are here is about hope and don't give up, as everyone said. And even if someone is not a religious person, the hope in situations like that is something you can, like, you have hope will move person.
Right.
So this is my final word here, is this is important, this conversation.
Right.
So
Right.
having this mindset here and give to others this hope, all this information is a main thing. So congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jeff?
This was great, and I just want to leave this last word. It was a guy in my transition house. I went out of town, and he went and smoked crack. So my boy was like, put him out, put him out. I say, hey, no, wait till I get back. And I hung in there with that guy and walked with that guy through that, man. And that guy became the head deacon in the church. You know, because I ain't give up on him. Look here, when you come to shelter from the storm, I'm not finna give up on him. You gonna have to walk away and say, I don't want it. You know. But that gave me encouragement. Once I hold on, I kept on with him. He was a deacon in the church. He married now. And guess what? I told him he owed me. He married my secretary. You know, so I'm like, man, you owe me, man. But all the while, I'm glad I didn't give up on him. I just kept on going. So, Prince, and I know I was holding on, being close to you for something. So I see it now. So I just want to thank you for inviting me, and just thank God for who you are and who God turning you in to be, man. A blessing to a lot of people. Just keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Will Smith?
I would like to close by saying that we have people in life that follow well-beaten path, and we have people in life that blaze a trail. And this young man here is one of those brothers that is unconventional, and I feel blessed to know that he is a guy that dare to be different and make a difference, that is not being made, or just a difference maker. And my final words to you is that it's the scripture in the Bible says that if you've done it for the least among them, you've done it for me. If you have it in your heart to do good, these are the least, the ones we are talking about is the least among us. At one point, I was that one. And today I'm not, because I'm go back and reach out to the least among us that don't have nothing, that don't even, that might feel destitute, they might feel deprivation and oppression, and might be feel that nobody love them and never felt love. Because the first man that told me he loved me, I was locked up after about 4 years. A man told me he loved me, and I went and got a knife. Because I'm saying he must be thinking I'm funny or something, because nobody had never told me he loved me before. My dad never told me that. He showed me that, but he never told me that. So when the guy tell me that, I'm saying he must be thinking I'm gay or something wrong with me. But I'm saying all that to say is that it's a lot of things that we learn along the way that's miseducation. And some things never get expressed. Some things never get told. And you're in a unique position to make a difference that not being made. Maybe the love that you show may be to a person that never received the love. And if you do this good, it will be the greater good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Adrian?
Well, I say to the students, I'm grateful and I'm appreciative for what Santa Fe has offered me by opening their doors to me. And I appreciate the students, even though when y'all see me, I don't know my past, but I appreciate y'all for accepting me also. I guess I mean, you don't know, like I said, what I've been through, but you have accepted me. I have friends out here. I'm having a great time out here. I have aspirations to become a radiologist. So with that being said, there are state laws that are working against even me, with becoming a radiologist. Because I've committed a violent crime. I'm remorseful for that. I committed a violent crime in 2006. Was an armed robbery with a firearm. And now they're saying that I'm barred for life from receiving this occupational license. And there's many licenses out there, that I can't, by the letter, receive because of what I did in 2006. But I'm fighting against that. I'm striving against that. And I'm going to get into that radiology program. So that's my hope, is that you all have accepted me. Santa Fe has accepted me, and that the state of Florida will accept me. So that's the last thing I would say.
Well, I have to conclude with prison life, because that's been my whole life. Okay, that's pretty much all I know. I'm in a new learning mode now, being out here. So I can close saying, with all the questions and answers, whatever, about prison reform, my most transformational experience was spiritual. With the Kairos, man, that 4 days really did something to me. It shook me up. It taught me a lot about, I thought I knew a little something about the Bible and Jesus and, love your neighbor as yourself. And I come to realize through that experience, I didn't know how to love. I mean, really and truly. And I knew many others didn't know how. You talk the talk, but you can't walk the walk because you just didn't know. And from that religious, well, I don't want to say religious, spiritual, that's what it really was. That's the key. You got to be transformed, renewed in your mind, the way you think, your perspectives. That's the bottom line. That's the key. Yeah, I mean, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And once you understand what that really means, and you learn how to effect that process in yourself, you got it. That's it. Yes, sir.
I'll say amen to that. Well, it's been a very insightful conversation. This panel has been very transforming for me personally, and I believe the students, you've gained so much from this. The advocacy continues, just like Adrian Price have said. We are all in this together. Let us, continue to advocate for how to make society better, be it in prison reforms, be it in social reforms, and any other reforms that you feel is necessary. So I'm throwing the baton down to you, and the ball, as students viewing us now, for you to continue in this light to advocate for what is right in our society. And once more, I want to thank all our guests who have contributed in so many, insightful way towards this conversation. And we will be coming back with our last, topic, which is going to be on international law and human rights in a couple of weeks. But until then, I'm signing out. My name is Steve Prince Ulame Erise. Have a blessed one.